When are we recording?
Yeah,
yes, we're recording.
Welcome to part 3 of our interview with John Patrick Shanley on the Dave and Ed podcast, the concluding episode.
Yes, John Patrick Shanley is a screenwriter, a playwright, a virtuoso of theatre.
Pulitzer Prize winner, Tony Award winner, Lucille Lortel, drama critics.
Circle Award, Obie Award.
You forgot the Obie.
Okay, the Obie, yeah. Where we actually left off around Prodigal Son, I recall, but now that I mentioned those awards, maybe, could you talk a little bit about what awards mean to you, and were you surprised when you? Well, I know you talked about the Oscar one in the first episode, but
that was great. That was great fun. I mean, the thing is that in society, one of the things that can be helpful is credentials, and it's sort of like having a valid driver's license. That, if you've won a couple of awards that people have heard of, then you are dismissed less easily, whether or not that's just or not. And so that can be a useful thing. And then after a certain point, you're sort of like a South American dictator, where you just have all these meaningless ribbons and stuff, and nobody knows what they mean anymore.
Right. I guess winning the Pulitzer Prize, did you consider that to be like a really big deal?
Well, it was kind of great. It's a legendary award. And unlike many others, it's a prize. They call it a prize. Right. Most things are not a prize. They're, an award or something. Mm-hmm. I know that Peter Sheldall, who's the art critic for the New Yorker, at one point, he was awarded a gold medal. And I thought, ooh, that's good, You get this jacket, you have a little gold medal, people say, what's that? And it's a great conversation starter. Oh, this?
Right.
Gold medal for excellence.
So what is the Pulitzer Prize? Does it come in a little box or something?
No, it's it's one of the greats because you don't have to make a speech.
Okay.
So there's a very nice luncheon up at Columbia University, and the president of Columbia University calls your name, and you go up, and he shakes your hand, and he gives you a check for $10,000, and he says congratulations, and you go back to your seat.
Very good. Nice. Yeah.
A sort of prism, a little crystal engraved thing, and I think that they give that because for a long time people said, "You mean there's no prize? There's no actual thing?" So they created a little thing, and it's quite tasteful. But it's not anything that you particularly point to.
Right. Will we go back into what we were talking about, Prodigal Son?
Yes, that's what we were talking about before.
Dave and I were particularly curious about you describing you were kind of a violent teenager.
Mm-hmm.
We were also violent teenagers.
We were also, we wanted the gory details, Game of Thrones style. Yeah. Could you describe the violence?
The funny thing, when you describe yourself as a violent teenager, you're really describing two things. You're describing a person to whom violence was done.
Right.
Marinated in a violent atmosphere, and then who occasionally acted out of that atmosphere, out of that marinade, as it were. I did both. I mean, I had once in a while defended myself.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'll put it that way. And then a couple of times I gratuitously defended myself.
We're getting images.
Attacking. And then, I woke up one day and I was like, oh, wow, I was out of my mind. And it was because of what had come into me, been poured into me by the street corner society that I was living in, then came out of me. I don't think it was particularly indigenous to who I was born at all. I think that I was actually a gentle creature who was, bashed about enough where I started to respond.
Right. Mm-hmm. So was Prodigal Son a cathartic piece?
It was in many ways a cathartic piece to write, and it was a struggle as a playwright to get right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an enormously talented actor in Timothée Chalamet,
Yes.
and everybody else. It was a very good cast. And I struggled as a playwright. I was rewriting and rewriting, and I rewrote so much that the night that first string critic for the New York Times came, one of the actors went up, messed up his lines, went up about 5 or 6 times, and not necessarily in a way that looked like that was what was going on, but kind of mangled the most difficult scene in the play, which is why I've been working on it so much. So I'm not really sure whether or not, I certainly take responsibility because I just rewrote it so much and for so long. But I'm not really sure what somebody who saw that saw. Like, that's exactly what I meant. But in the end, it was, it was a very complicated, difficult, and worthy experience. And it's not that sort of, exhilaration where you just go like, home run. Right. It was more like, okay, this was like a knotty proposition. And Timothy was great and ended up getting better as we went on, and really proved his mettle on that show. And like everybody auditioned for that part in that age. Everybody, every boy, young actor played that part.
What made him stand out in the audition?
There was a mysterious factor. He was really good, and other people have been really good, but there was something mysterious about him. And let's face it, the part it's about a young artist who's basically an obnoxious asshole.
Right.
At this point in his life, and older people who sort of take him in and don't let him fall. Left to his own devices, he would fall. Right. But there's just enough protection around him to see him through this perilous passage that he has to go through. That journey is predicated on who he ultimately is going to be, which is, and when he's more centered, when he's older, and that he's going to be an artist, and me, and hopefully with compassion and, some understanding of other people, which this kid doesn't really have yet.
Right.
But that's what Timothy is, So that's what he is, that X factor. He's a deeply artistic person playing a somewhat artistic person. So he's really bringing the gold to the manger.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was going to talk about outside Mullingar.
So we'll get to that. Yeah. I just with last thing on Prodigal Son. Is it true that that was written as a novel as well? I saw somewhere. I don't know.
No.
Okay.
No,
that might have misread. I thought it was adapted. My last question regarding directing. Well, maybe not the last question. Have you ever directed other people's work, John?
Virtually never. I've been offered other films.
Right.
There was one that I considered because I thought it was just very well written, and it was sort of cool. It was, and it got made. I think it was called Pawn Sacrifice, and it was about Bobby Fischer, and it was a really well-written screenplay about a compelling character. And in the end, I went back and forth, and I decided not to go for it. Right. But in general, I haven't seen anything. I would direct somebody else if I, number one, understood it,
Uh-huh.
the way you need to as a director. And number two, really, really, really liked it. In fact, after doing my last film, really, really, really liked it, because it is an extraordinary amount of work. And you don't, you can see something and say, oh, this is pretty good. Blah, blah, blah. And you say, is it going to be pretty good in 2 years? Because that's how long you're going to be working on this.
Right.
Yeah. And John, talk to us about your inspiration for Outside Mullingar.
Yeah.
Like,
well, Outside Mullingar was liked out in the sense that I had these Sisters of Charity with the bonnets, and I always knew someday I was going to write about them because they spoke really well. They were dressed in a very interesting way. It was an interesting time and place. And my family in Ireland has a farm outside Mullingar, and that's still in the family now. And my cousin Anthony owns that farm, and his father Tony. I didn't even change the names in this thing.
Okay.
He was there with him, smoking his pipe till he died. And when he died, he had his children gather around him and thanked each one of them for being his children, took their hand and shook their hand and thanked them. And these people spoke in a way that was so beautiful. And they were so complicated and so sophisticated. It was a no-brainer. It's like, well, obviously, you're going to end up writing about these people at some point. It was actually very interesting, though, how I finally got there. I decided at one point to write a bunch of one-act plays. And I just started writing them one after the other. And maybe I had like 10 of them. And then I said, okay, now we're going to do an evening, a workshop of these 10 plays, and with music. And I got some musicians, and we rehearsed it, and I had this great cast, and I put on these 10 plays. And most of them went really well. But one of them just leapt out as being like, oh my God, you got to deal with this because there's something really big going on in this play. And it was the play that was going to end up being Outside Mullingar. It was just one scene in the kitchen, and it just played differently, was different than all the rest of the material. And I've come to think of doing that kind of work as like, the way that they look for oil is they sink a bunch of wells until they find the spot where it really goes deep, and there's a big thing down there, big gusher. And I find that's an interesting way to work on plays. Is to do a bunch of one-act plays and then see which of them demands to be developed further. But that's how I came to do that. It's funny because right now I just committed to nobody but myself, but I committed to write a story in its entirety once a day.
Okay.
And I'm doing that now, and I have to tell you, it is brutal. It is just, it takes every day. It takes the day.
Yeah.
And I did it once before, and I wrote like 60 of them. And then one day I just went, I cannot do any more of these. And now I've started to do a few, I don't know how many, I'm not going to do anything like that, but it's a very interesting way to take your creative pulse on a daily basis. It's a very interesting way to generate plots, lots of them. And it's a very interesting way to sort of find out what's going on with you. Because what ends up, if you write that many of them, in the end, you get surprised. You don't know what the hell you're going to write about anymore. And you get ahead of yourself. You get the jump on yourself. And that's always great for a writer. So in Mullingar, I did this one act. It turned out to be, had a tremendous potential. And then I decided to write it as a full length, and I wrote it as a full length, and immediately I knew that it was very good. And indeed, the people that I sent it to all immediately wanted to do it. And then we did it. But, we did it with, we did it on stage, so we didn't do it in Ireland. And so that left this great unseen character, Ireland, and the animals that are around a farm. It left those two things out. And really, as much as anything, I really wanted to make the film to bring those two elements to it. And indeed, there is a tremendous number of animals that I've worked with now. And the beautiful land of Ireland. I found this gorgeous farm in Mayo, County Mayo, and shot a tremendous amount of the film there.
And just going back to the Broadway production of Outside Mullingar, did you have an input into casting that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I did the reading, and I cast the reading with Debra Messing and Brian F. O'Byrne, and I'm not sure. I probably needed some help in casting the other roles.
Right.
But we cast it very well. And then when we did the production, we were already in a court. Doug Hughes had done Doubt, and he'd done my next play, Defiance, and now he'd done Outside Mullingar. So we were very much on the same page.
Yeah. Our friend Peter Maloney was in that production.
Yeah. Peter Maloney was great.
Yeah.
He did a great job.
Yeah.
He's a friend of the Dave and Ed podcast too.
Yeah.
Oh, is that good?
We're also doing a trilogy with him.
Yeah.
Is that right? I saw, and he's worthy of it. He's living theater history. He's been around. He's done a lot of stuff. He, in fact, was my technical advisor on Storefront Church because I needed a magician to show me how to get something to disappear on stage.
He's a magician.
Brilliant. And Debra Messing, how was she? Like, how was she to work?
She was
with?
amazing in the play.
Oh, did you see the production?
I did.
Oh yeah, excuse me, I didn't see it. Right.
So I gave Debra Messing her first job.
Oh, here we go.
I hired her as an understudy on Four Dogs and a Bone. And she was so talented that after one rehearsal, I just started laughing. I said, "You are so gone. You so have your own television show." And she said, "And you're going to write it." And I said, "No." And I'm really sad about it because it would make me very rich. I'm not the right person. And, and indeed, she did very well. But she did Outside Mullingar. She came back and she did Outside Mullingar for me. And she's just great. I just, in fact, did a series of 10 monologues for Dramatist Play Service to sort of keep the activities there alive because all the theaters in America are shut. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine what that means. And Dramatist Play Service, their entire business is they lease plays to theaters around the United States and Canada, and they haven't been able to do any of that. And they publish the plays in acting editions. That's their entire business. So I'm on their board of directors, and I said, well, maybe I should, do something to call some attention to the service right now. And I said, maybe I could do these monologues, and you could have a website, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, that'd be great. So I went to John Turturro and Ethan Hawke and Debra Messing and a bunch of other people, and I recorded 10 monologues they'll then publish on their website very soon, actually, and they'll also publish a book, and any money that derives from that book will be contributed to the Actors Fund.
Okay,
cool.
Yeah. So
maybe we could talk a bit about the film Wild Mountain Thyme, the adaptation of. I guess I'm curious, is there any specific reason why you changed the name? Like you didn't keep the name?
I always thought that Outside Mullingar was the single worst title I'd ever come up with.
Okay.
Right.
I was like that. First of all, 99.9% of people have no idea what Mullingar is, nor even how to pronounce it. Mm-hmm. And when you explain what it is, they're like, oh, It doesn't add anything. It's not Eccentricities of a Nightingale. It's a very incredibly prosaic title. And so I wanted something that had some more scope. And I wanted something that had some romance in it.
Right.
And also adore that song, Wild Mountain Thyme.
Right. Sure.
So, which is, is a song that was written in Ireland. And I thought, well, I'm going to go down that road. And as a result, because the farm that's in my family is in the Midlands, there are no mountains.
Right.
So then I started to look further west. And in Mayo, I found this farm, which has in the background of the farm, a lone mountain stands by itself, which is fairly unusual, that dominates the whole landscape. And so I'm like, okay, there we are,
Great.
That's awesome.
And oh yeah, sorry.
Referring to our notes.
Referring to our notes here.
Well,
so go on.
Well, yeah, just maybe talk more about the
cast. Tell us about casting and directing.
The adaptation of that, like adapting it for screen. How much of the play remains?
Rewriting the play
right
outside Mullingar was the single most pleasurable writing I've ever done in my life. I had so much joy in listening to those people talk and refining and getting right what they would say. I can't even explain it to you. And so then when I was going to do the film, I could add to that the beautiful art direction that would be possible to do the interiors of the different farmhouses that were in the film. And then, of course, the landscapes around them. And then and looking around, I said, I want a guy, he's got to be romantic. He's got to be, I don't know, like Heathcliff in Ireland. And it actually, when you actually go down the list and you say those things and you start looking at everybody, you go like, there's really almost nobody who can do this part.
Right.
Once you get very, very specific. And then Jamie Dornan, who had been in 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
But it was a very successful romance, so he was identified already as a romantic lead, and it turns out he's Irish and lives in Ireland. And I watched this movie he made with Peter Dinklage called Hervé and Me. And I thought, this guy's really kind of great. Yeah. And I had already watched 50 Shades of Grey, and which I laughed constantly through the first half of the film, and then fell into a sullen silence in the second half. But I had a very strong hunch that Jamie would be very right for this. And indeed, it turned out he was spectacular. And I had an actress, but the dates kept changing. And in the end, I couldn't keep her because she had a commitment, and the commitment time came up, and the dates had been pushed several times, and we couldn't go with her anymore. Oh. And it started to look like the film probably was going to have a lot of trouble getting made because time was sort of running out the window. You had to shoot this one. It's beautiful in Ireland. And then my producer said, well, you had a list, and on the list is Emily Blunt. How would you feel about her playing the part? And I chuckled ruefully, and I said, well, she'd be great if you could get her. She'd just been in she was the biggest female box office star in the world.
Right. Yeah.
So I sent it to her, and I went off to Nice on vacation and got a phone call. I think Emily wants to do it. And it was like 3 days later or something. And I'm like, what? And then I mentioned Chris Walken. They said, yeah, and I think Chris Walken wants to do it too. And I'm like, what? Okay. All right. So suddenly the whole thing fell into place. and I had this, wonderful cast, and I had then there's a part of an older woman that was the last piece of the puzzle, and that part had been played on stage by a wonderful Irish English actress named Dervla Malloy.
Yes, of course.
And I said, well, how about Dervla Malloy? Thinking I was going to get the usual, now, we need a bigger name kind of thing, And they said, great. And I was like, okay, this is turning suddenly easy, and which it never is.
Right.
And that was the last piece of the puzzle. And then we had this great cast. And as you'll see when you see the film, Dervla Malloy is magic in it. She's just wonderful in it. And Chris Walken is Chris Walken.
Yeah.
And brings a tremendous amount of soul to it. Did a great job. Such a committed man and such a sweet man. So that's how we cast the film.
Right. Does Christopher Walken have a specific technique?
Yes. Yes, he does.
You extrapolate on that?
When I talk to Chris, they say, well, could you give Chris a call? I'm like, okay. So I call up and hello? Hi, this is John Chan. He goes, thank you for calling me. And I'm like, I started laughing. I'm like, well, yeah, fine. Thank you for talking to me, And he said, I know right now my voice is a little thin because I haven't talked to anybody in several weeks. I'm like, all right. He said, if you, and then we agreed to do the film. And then he said, well, the way that I work is I put the script in the kitchen, and I go through the kitchen a lot. And anytime I go through the kitchen, I look at the script. And he had that way of just like you're waiting for the rest of it, and there is no rest of it. And we used to call them Walken stories, because they just go off a cliff. You just be like, okay. But basically, we got a dialect coach and worked on the script a great deal before he got there. And then we rehearsed for a few days before we started shooting. And at one point he took me out for a walk and he said, these other two people in the scene. I'm like, yeah, they're Irish. I said, I know, because I'm not Irish. I'm like, I know, Chris, I know. And I said, I just want you to know, whenever you're scared, I'm scared too. And he sort of nodded and we went back in. And, he got better every day. And by the time we started shooting, he was pretty freaking great. And he just kept getting better from there.
Yeah, great. Awesome. And how long was the shoot for?
5 weeks.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how was the weather for your shoot? Did you have favorable weather?
And did you have fun?
Well, I mean, it rained from time to time, but we actually did really well. We had one day where we had, of course, all the extras in the world, animals, costumes, all sorts of stuff, and it rained all day.
Right.
And I said, this is perfect.
Awesome.
I absolutely refused to not shoot or to say, well, we'll have to compromise. I'm like, this is exactly what I was hoping. Basically, whatever happened meteorologically, I said, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Nice. And it usually turned out to work out very well.
Oh. Cool. When will this be released? When will we?
I think now, because we have this murky problem of, lockdown.
Yeah.
COVID and all of that. I think it'll be released in, I'm going to guess, the winter of 2021.
Cool. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Any more artistic questions, Dave?
No, not.
We're curious,
Go for it.
John, the broader question, are you a spiritual man? Would you consider yourself a spiritual man?
Oh, yes,
Like,
absolutely.
do you believe in God, or is God everywhere? What do you believe?
I believe in everything.
Everything.
And its opposite.
Nice.
Okay. Could you explain that?
Explain that to us.
That's very, very important to me.
Yeah.
Well, the polarities,
Yes.
and the meaning, meaninglessness, meaning, back and forth, the ping pong of the way that we think about things, the way that we relate to the universe, the idea of conviction and of doubt living side by side comfortably is very important. I mean, I'm very comfortable with paradox and contradiction. But I know that there's a spirit that runs through everything. And I know I don't know what it is. And I know that there's meaning, and I know that I'll never know what it is. And I will speculate and maybe even come to firm conclusions and know that they are built on sand. And I will take pleasure from all of those things. And I will die knowing nothing for certain.
Right. So you take something from all the different religions maybe and beliefs, like you take all the good stuff from each of them?
I like to argue with all the religions.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of no attachment, the sort of basic Buddhism kind of thing. I'm like, I understand it, but don't do it. But at a certain point, do it.
Right.
So in other words, attachment is an illusion. You can't really own anything. You can't really hold on to anything. You can't really hold on to anyone or any time or any. And you can have emotions that make you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you should completely go there. You should say, to a woman you're mad about, "You're mine. I'll kill myself if you leave me." We're here to make every mistake there is to be made. We're not here to get it right. We're just not. Because we don't know what right is. Right. So it's, the biggest mistake you can make is having 88 keys on the piano and only playing 6.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. A wise man once said, the good news is nothing lasts forever. The bad news is nothing lasts forever.
Amen. Amen.
Go for it.
That's it, Even, and though it seems not true, even this interview won't last forever.
Oh, wow.
Well played.
Before enlightenment, chop wood. After enlightenment, chop wood. Yeah. Very good. I think that was a beautiful
ending to our chat.
Yeah, we don't have to go any further, really, because we've covered so much in 3 meetings. So.
Well, you guys have been kindness itself and very intelligent and good spirited about it all. I do appreciate that.
We appreciate you, John. And yes. No pressure, but please write us into one of your next plays.
Yeah.
Well, right now I'm writing the story a day, which is going to be that's going to be the end of me. So.
Brilliant. Yeah. I'm sure it won't be the end of you.
I usually get cast as menacing, like masculine guys, and Ed is a little bit more
feminist. Yeah.
So we should probably just switch it then.
Switch it, yeah, sure.
You're butch as hell, and you're like a flower.
Right.
Brilliant.
And he crushes the flower. Yeah. It'll be great.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe next week.
Cool. All right. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Have a great
All right. You be well now.
You too.
Thank you, John.
I'll see you around the block.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.